these areas, I quote, stated, competition, social and employment standards, environment, climate change, and relevant tax matters. This is the political declaration agreed between us and the UK government. And that is what modern trade policy is about. Not just lowering tariffs and removing quotas. It's about finding agreement between sovereign parties on the rules that will govern future trade. As Commissioner Phil Hogan often says, a modern trade policy must contribute to upholding or even raising rights and standards in the interest of citizens, consumers, and sustainable development. We hear the British government's concern about maintaining its sovereignty and its regulatory autonomy, and we respect that clearly. But no international agreement was ever reached without the parties agreeing to common rules. No international agreement. And I can predict with absolute certainty this will also be the case of trade agreements between the UK and other partners in the future, such as the United States, Japan, and Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, apart from the question of a level playing field, there are still many other areas where progress is needed, and for example, obviously fisheries, where we have made no progress whatsoever on the issues that matter. Governance, where we are still far from agreeing on the essential issue of the dispute settlement. Law enforcement, where we still struggle to agree on the necessary guarantees to protect citizens' fundamental rights and personal data. And also mobility and social security coordination, where our positions are also remain far apart. Nonetheless, to be fully objective, I should add that in some of the 10 tables that convened this week, we were able to make progress on technical issues, for example, on energy cooperation, participation in union programs, and anti-money laundering, among others. And this will be useful when it comes to consolidate together a final text, provided we are able to agree on fundamentals first. However, too often this week, it felt as if we were going backwards more than forwards. Given the short time left, what I said in London in July remains true. Today, at this stage, an agreement between UK and the European Union seems unlikely. I simply do not understand why we are wasting valuable time. Mesdames et Messieurs,
ladies and gentlemen, as you will have understood, on the European side, we are very concerned about the state of play in our negotiations. And to be perfectly candid, we don't see how delaying the most difficult issues until later would help us reach a better agreement. We will have to start working on consolidating the legal text. We're willing and able to do that. We already proposed a comprehensive text in March. The British side too have proposed British texts on various issues. But it will only be possible and useful to produce a consolidated text if we do so working together, not each of us on our separate sides. And if we do all of this in parallel, I do hope that this point will come across clearly to our British partners. But we haven't reached that stage yet, because at this point in time, the only serious prospect would be an offer from the United Kingdom would be zero quotas, zero tariffs, without any agreement on the level playing field and without any balanced agreement on fisheries. This is a non-starter, a no-go for us, because it simply blocks everything. Last week, we heard Boris Johnson in his meeting with Taoiseach Micheál Martin stressing his desire to reach an agreement with the European Union. He's already said that to us, and that is what we hope for too. I think it is still possible, despite the relatively short time left to us. But in order to achieve this, our British partners will need to come forward with clear, constructive proposals during the next round to take place in London from 7th to 11th of September. Ladies and gentlemen, in parallel with these very complex negotiations, we continue with Vice President Maroš Šefčovič. We continue to be very vigilant on the proper implementation of the withdrawal agreement by 31st of December of this year. As regards the Northern Ireland Protocol, the recent statements by Prime Minister Johnson have stressed how sensitive this issue is, but we hope that the United Kingdom will do whatever is necessary to ensure effective implementation of the legal obligations on both sides in this protocol, which has now been ratified.
Implementation of the protocol is the only way to preserve Ireland's all-Ireland economy, to protect the integrity of the single market, and, above all, to ensure continued peace and stability on the island of Ireland. And in saying this, I want to pay tribute once again to the dedication and determination of John Hume, who sadly left us a few weeks ago.
Coming to one particular aspect of this withdrawal agreement, which we need to implement, citizens' rights, we continue to pay close attention to the full implementation of this agreement on both sides, for EU citizens living in the United Kingdom and British citizens living in EU countries. We are following up on both sides the proper implementation of the commitments set out in the withdrawal agreement. We're working in close collaboration with civil society and with citizens' associations who were present or represented during the second meeting of the Specialised Committee on Citizen Rights, which took place on 6th of August. We see as a key priority tackling the ongoing COVID-19 crisis with all its very serious economic and social consequences everywhere. Nonetheless, despite this priority linked to the COVID-19 crisis, we have to be realistic too in terms of preparing for and facing up to the big changes which will come into play as 1st of January next, the date as of which Britain has opted for economic and trade Brexit. And with or without a trade agreement, there will be major implications. That is a direct consequence of Brexit, and that is why a few days ago the European Commission began a virtual tour of our capitals to accompany national administrations in preparing for effective Brexit. We have published a readiness communication in all 23 official languages, taking on board the implications for all the players in the European Union, all the measures which our businesses, administrations, and other stakeholders will need to take in order to be as fully prepared as possible for a very new and very different situation as of 1st of January next. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, at the outcome of this round. The next round is scheduled for the week starting on the 7th of September. And in the meantime, with David Frost and his team, we will continue working over and staying in contact over the next 2 weeks, above and beyond the negotiation process and above and beyond the issues on our negotiating agenda. It is the points of substance, which I have already mentioned, which need to be addressed.
Phrase, the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barnier. We now have time for a few short questions on this week's round. I will give the floor, first of all, to Jennifer Rankin from The Guardian.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. Mr. Barnier, can you confirm whether you received from David Frost a draft free trade agreement? And given what you said about the level playing field, if you did receive such a text, it would seem that hasn't made any breakthrough. But could you give us your overall assessment of that document and how useful it is? Thank you.
Madame, tous les documents sont utiles.
Well, all documents we receive are useful indeed. We did indeed receive the new British document outlining the British position. Very often these are repetitions of previous positions. Sometimes there's been a slight amendment or correction, but it's always useful to get these documents so we get a better understanding of each other's positions. But I just would like to recall one thing which needs to be very well understood and maybe is not always very well understood, even though we keep repeating it and have been repeating it over the last 4 years, and we confirm this. This has been confirmed by the 27 heads of state and government and been also confirmed by the Parliament. A trade agreement must comprise 3 indissociable parts. What we proposed, or this is what we proposed, and this is new, this has never been done before in trade. What we proposed was 0 tariffs and 0 quotas for exchange of trade of goods. And the second element is that there would be a level playing field guaranteeing that you have fair play between 2 parties who are very close together. There's hardly a kilometre between, no kilometres at all between Ireland and the UK. And there's a very high level of trade, and there has been for a very long time. And then the third part of this, also linked to trade, is the question of fishing, where we want to have a balanced agreement. So these are 3 essential parts, integral parts of an agreement. It's always a useful thing for the UK to remind us of their position on trading goods and services. It's always a useful thing, as I say. However, we can only work on a consolidated text if we do that together. We can't have everybody operating on a unilateral basis, and we need to work on a whole package because they are all essential parts of this. So my mandate is clear, and I'm repeating this once again so that it's quite clear. If the UK wants to have a trade agreement with the EU and it's going to be no tariffs and no quotas, there must be a credible level playing field. It's got to be applied in a credible way, so that we can avoid dumping on both sides. And we need to have a balanced agreement on fishing, and that is not the case in the documents that we have received. Now, I've repeated this many times before, but I'm saying it to you again now.
I give the floor to Joe Barnes.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Mr. Barnier. So, Mr. Barnier, are you willing to see the talks kind of enter into a phase where no deal is a genuine reality by maintaining that you will have to negotiate in parallelism instead of actually looking at the more important topics, first of all, and kind of getting agreements where things are already agreed? Thank you.
Je ne suis pas sûr d'avoir.
I'm not sure I really understood your question properly, but I'll try and answer it anyway. And maybe if you want to take the floor later again to make it clearer, you can. What we want to achieve is an agreement on the most important topics. That's what we're working on. And there are 3 main groups which make up the comprehensive partnership. On one hand, you have trade, with 0 tariffs and 0 quotas, with the level playing field and the fishing agreement. Then you have transport, energy, and many other topics as well, linked to mobility in particular. And then Finally, you have security, which is very important for our citizens on both sides. So those are the main areas that we've done an enormous amount of work on. We've clarified some of these issues. We've made progress since the beginning of this second set of negotiations on future relations. But you asked me to identify the most important topics. I mean, obviously trade lies at the heart of this. That's the hub of the future partnership. And as I said to your colleague, there have to be these conditions, and the conditions are outlined in my mandate.
I'll now pass the floor to Nick Gutteridge.
Hi there. Thanks, Dan. Hi, Mr. Barnier. In your remarks, you said that you were kind of surprised at the approach by the UK, and you questioned why we're wasting time. You sounded a bit like you were losing faith that the British side really wants an agreement and that wants it enough to sort of, make the compromises that you would see as necessary. Have you seen a sort of an attitude change, if you like, on the British side that makes you feel that they no longer value a deal? And just really quickly on parallelism to follow up on Joe, isn't it fairly kind of standard and logical that sides would want to leave sort of, the most important things to them until the last minute as leverage? And aren't you doing it as well? I mean, the UK wants to talk about an agreement on asylum, for instance. The financial services equivalence decisions going very slowly. There are various other things like mutual recognition agreements that the UK wants to talk about. Are you not leaving some of those things back until September or October as well? And isn't that sort of just good negotiating? Thank you.
C'est une phrase.
Now, Nick, I think we've heard before that there won't be an agreement at all until everything is agreed. I think that we can agree on that method, a British method as well. I think the important thing to me is what the British Prime Minister have said. I've listened very carefully to what he said. We've had the conversations. And last week, the British Prime Minister met the Taoiseach, and he clearly recalled that he wished to have an agreement with the EU. That's the important thing for me. And I understand that. Because if you have agreement, then of course you will have a degree of economic stability, and if you don't, if you look at how trade works between the EU and the UK, if you look at how trade works, if you don't have an agreement, you'll have economic turbulence, and if not social and political disruption. So I think it's in our common interest. That's what the Prime Minister was saying. He was saying it was important for him. I mean, we agree on that. And that is really what the mandate, which has been handed down to me by the 27 heads of state, is about. But it has to be a comprehensive agreement. We won't pay the price of making the single market fragile. We won't take the risk of opening our markets with no quotas, no tariffs to the UK markets. We won't have a situation where our own jobs are threatened or where the social and environmental rights of in the EU are threatened. We want to have a balanced situation. We're not frightened of competition, and President von der Leyen has said very clearly that this is the case. Competition is part of life. We want competition, but we want it to be fair competition. And our philosophy is something which we've heard from the British side as well. It's this new generation of trade agreements. And that's why this agreement won't be like the agreements you used to see 15, 20 years ago in countries which are further away and maybe of less economic significance for us. We want new agreements which are modern agreements. And that's why we understand citizens' concerns. I hear people's concerns. I hear people are expressing concerns about the environment, about social rights, consumers' rights, fair play, and climate change. So I've given you quite a general answer here. Obviously, there are many details in negotiations. I know about tactics. I know that some subjects are sometimes set aside or delayed. But I think it's important to recall also that we're talking about very complex issues, particularly for fisheries, where we're talking about 100 species. It's a very complex area with complex legal implications, state aid as well. We're waiting to see what British policy will be on state aid rules and the non-regression clause, and that takes time. It does take time. We've got good lawyers on both sides, but they need to know exactly what to work on. So that's why I'm concerned, that's why I'm worried and disappointed, because I see that time is passing by and that we are taking a risk. There's a risk of us not being able to ratify the treaty by the end of the year.
Mr. Barnier, I have one final hand up. I give the floor to Vince Chadwick.
Thank you. Hi. I've got a question about development policy. Given that in June you said that the UK had refused to speak about this and you weren't sure why that was the case, just wondering if there's been any more clarity on the future for development and humanitarian relations. Thanks.
No.
No. Very quick answer there. No, because nothing has changed. We're amenable to discussing this. This is of interest to all member states. I'm sure it's of interest to the UK as well to have a preventive framework. It's very useful for us to have that in development, particularly in Africa, for political cooperation for the UN or in sensitive areas, Mediterranean, for example, so that we could have cooperation in external affairs. Sometimes that's useful too for the UK. So it would be very useful to have a workable framework within which to work rather than improvising when a crisis arises. I think the situation in foreign affairs a few years ago made me aware of this need. I don't think the UK wants to discuss this. That's fine. That's their choice. But I'm quite sure this will be the subject of a discussion later once this main hub, the partnership agreement, has been dealt with, and also questions of security. But we are amenable to discussing this. We are open, interested in discussing such an issue, which really does relate to stability in many ways on our continent, and I think you can only have stability if we work together. And this is true of defence issues that I referred to earlier as well.
Now concludes our press conference. A huge thank you to our interpreters and to our technicians as well. We will move over to the midday press conference in the next couple of minutes. Thank you very much and have a lovely weekend.
Bonjour à tous.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us live from the press room of the European Commission today on Friday, 21st of August. We have a number of announcements to make before moving on to any questions. Let me invite Viviane to talk to us about the vaccines issue.
Thank you, Dana. And good afternoon. So yesterday, the Commission has concluded exploratory talks with CureVac to purchase a potential vaccine against the coronavirus. The envisaged contract with CureVac, which is a European company developing a completely new class of vaccines, would provide for the possibility for all EU member states to purchase the vaccine, as well as to donate to low and medium income countries or redirect to other European countries. CureVac had previously received a 75 million euros of EU financing agreement for the development and large-scale production of vaccines. We will now work with CureVac on a contractual framework to have it in place for the initial purchase of 225 million doses on behalf of all EU member states to be supplied once the vaccine has proven to be safe and effective against the coronavirus. This announcement, of course, follows the positive steps that we've kept you informed about already regarding the Sanofi announcement on the 31st of July and Johnson & Johnson last week, as well as the signing of the first advance purchase agreement with AstraZeneca last Friday. On our side, we will now continue our intensive discussions with the pharmaceuticals to make sure that we have, with the vaccine manufacturers, to make sure that we have the vaccines in place according to our vaccine strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Viviane. Avant de passer à vos questions.
Before moving on to questions, let me just remind you that as of Monday, we will be returning to our normal program of press briefings. We will have a midday briefing live from the press room every working day. So we'll be returning to normal working mode after the summer break. So let me now open the floor for any questions. And I see that Maria has raised her hand. She would like to put a question. So Maria, please.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Hello, it's Maria Psara from Open TV Greece. I have a question on Turkey. Actually, it's after Hagia Sophia today, the horror church in Istanbul, which was a museum, transformed into a mosque. Do you have any reactions on this? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Maria. I will try to see if Christian, in his many hats, is connected so that he can attempt to give a reaction. Christian, are you there?
I am, yes. But usually I haven't covered this question, I must say. I think this is was more on I'm not sure if it was on the foreign affairs side or on the cultural side.
Yes. So I will give the floor to Nabila, because with the summer permanence and the many hats that you wear this week, I was assuming that you wear that hat as well. But Nabila is here.
Good morning, Maria. We've just seen actually the announcement that you're talking about. We take note of the decision to turn Istanbul's Korakariye Church, which has served as a museum since 1945, into a mosque and open it to worship. Like Hagia Sophia, the Kora building is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. As a founding member of the Alliance of Civilizations, Turkey has committed to the promotion of interreligious and intercultural dialogue and to fostering of tolerance and coexistence.
Thank you very much, Nabila. I now see that Athanasios has his hand raised. Athanasios, if your question is for Nabila, please go ahead. Otherwise, I will invite you to unraise your hand.
It is.
Yes, it is for Nabila, so go ahead.
It is for Nabila, it is Foreign Affairs, and it's on the information that's arriving from the Turkish Cypriot community that the city of Famagusta, which is currently enclosed, is about to reopen. There are some works on the site. They are building or rebuilding or demolishing things over there. And as we all know, there is a UN Security Council resolution from 1984 that protects the status of this city. So I was wondering what the European Commission can do about it. Are you informed of an intention from any party to reopen the city, and what's going to be the reaction on that? Thanks.
Thank you very much for your question, Athanasios. There is clearly a foreign affairs angle, but that question is actually for Vivian. Therefore, the question is noted, but I would still invite other colleagues in the meantime, if there are other questions for Nabila, to ask those, and we will get back to your question very rapidly thereafter. So I invite colleagues to ask additional questions to Nabila if there are any, on the subject that was opened by Maria, or on additional ones. I understand that Thibault has a question for Nabila, so Thibault, go ahead.
Oui, bonjour, Thibault Larger, Politico.
Yes, good day, Politico. I have a question concerning the meeting on Sunday concerning PSG, suggesting that Qatar had provided funding to be able to buy very expensive players, and this might be contrary to competition rules. I would just like to know whether the Commission has any plans to investigate this sort of action.
Non, Thibault,
Well, Thibault, I'm afraid I can't answer that question at this time, but I will definitely come back to you with more details once I've had an opportunity to look into exactly what's happening. Unfortunately, I can't answer that now, but I will come back to you in due time. Thank you, Nabila. I see a question from Ricard. Ricard, you have the floor.
Yes, it is, as usual. Hey, Nabila. I'm just wondering, I saw the tweet from Mr. Borrell that he had spoken to Mr. Lavrov, and I just wanted to know, did he raise the issue of Alexei Navalny as well? And is the External Action Service in any way involved in trying to get Mr. Navalny to EU territory for medical help? And also, Dana, a question for you, if I may. We've seen that Charles Michel has spoken to Vladimir Putin twice this week. Is Madame von der Leyen also in touch with the Russian president, or is there a labor of division between the two EU presidents, so to speak, when it comes to direct contact with the Russian president? Thank you.
hello, Ricard, and thank you for your question. We are very worried about Alexei Navalny's health. Following his suspected poisoning yesterday, we wish him a swift and full recovery. We expect a swift, independent, transparent investigation. And if confirmed, those responsible must be held to account. We trust that the Russian authorities will stand by their promises to allow Mr. Navalny to be safely and speedily transferred abroad in order to receive medical treatment in line with the wishes of his family. We are grateful to the German medical services for their offer to take Mr. Navalny to Germany for his medical treatment. Our delegation in Moscow is in close contact with Navalny's office. We will continue to follow the development closely. I'm not sure if you had another question, Ricard. I'm sorry, I missed the question. Another question for me, or was it for Dana?
Yeah, it's more, is did Mr. Borrell raise the issue of Navalny in his talks with Lavrov yesterday? Because the tweet didn't mention this part. It mentioned only Belarus, in fact, and Iran. And also, is the EU actually involved directly in trying to get Navalny to the EU?
As you saw in the tweet, Ricard, the call focused on two very pressing issues, which are the Belarus and the preservation of the JCPOA, this is what they discussed yesterday. Having said that, I'm sure you've seen the tweet where the HRVP showed how preoccupied he was about the situation of Mr. Navalny, and he reacted publicly to the suspected poisoning of Mr. Navalny as soon as we found out, and before the call took place. So the Russian authorities are well aware that we are closely watching this and our expectations regarding the need for his safe transfer and treatment, as well as the independent investigation. As for if we are speaking, I think about his transfer, as I said, the delegation is involved closely, and we are in contact with all our counterparts. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nabila. As to your question concerning President von der Leyen and possible other contacts, I would like to inform you that President von der Leyen is following the situation in Belarus very closely. She is in very frequent contact with many parts and stakeholders that follow this closely as well. There is a very fluid communication with the President of the European Council on this and on all other relevant matters. As regards direct contacts with President Putin, I have no announcements at this stage to make regarding any such direct contacts between the President of the European Commission and the Russian President. Thank you, Richard. I see now that Moses' hand is raised. So, Moses, I assume that your question is for Nabila.
Yes, thank you, Dana. I would also like to ask a question to Nabila, and that concerns the ruling by the Special Tribunal for Lebanon on Tuesday. I noticed that the spokesperson, maybe Nabila herself, issued a statement on Tuesday evening on that ruling, where one of the four suspected defendants was convicted for this assassination of the Prime Minister of Lebanon. And I would like to ask a clarification about that statement, because it said that we hope that judgment will be given appropriate follow-up by Lebanon, and also that the statement stressed the importance of Lebanon's continued commitment to the full implementation of its international obligations, including, that United Security Resolution 1757, which established a tribunal. So I wonder what you might have in mind. What exactly should happen now after the ruling of the tribunal? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Mose. I think as you said, you've looked at the statement that we published right after the ruling. Now I think we need to see how things will evolve, leave it to a due course, and then we take it from there. But at this point, I don't think I can add anything to the statement that was published and to our reaction.
Thank you very much, Nabila. I invite you to raise your hand if you have additional questions for Nabila today. I see Anna's hand raised, so I imagine that it's for Nabila. So in this case, Anna, go ahead, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Hello?
can hear you.
Thank you for offering me a possibility. My question is also actually on Navalny, because technically I couldn't join you earlier. I wished to find out if Mr. Borrell raised the issue in the frame of European Convention of Human Rights, and if he has underlined that it's Article 2 of European Convention on Human Rights, right to life, and if also Mr. Borrell discussed the issue with his colleagues in the Council of Europe, because at the moment the hospital prevents the family to transport Mr. Navalny to Germany, to corresponding relevant hospital, and accepting this invitation, kind invitation of Chancellor Merkel. So my question is about our European Convention of Human Rights and Article 2 and this frame, how the issue has been framed.
Nabila?
Do I need to push? Hi, Anna. Thank you for your question. As I said earlier in my statement, is that yesterday in his call with Mr. Lavrov, the HRVP focused on the situation in Belarus and the preservation of the JCPOA at this point in time. When it comes to Mr. Navalny, you've seen that he reacted very early on. The High Representative already reacted publicly to the suspected poisoning of Mr. Navalny just before the call took place. And the Russian authorities are well aware that we are closely watching this and that our expectations regarding the need of his safe transfer and treatment as well as independent investigation. I don't think I can add anything at this point in time to what we have said already about the situation of Mr. Navalny, apart from the fact that we are extremely preoccupied by his health and that we wish him swift and full recovery.
Thank you very much, Nabila. I understand that Anna has a follow-up question since her hand is still raised. So Anna, go ahead. No, that doesn't seem to. Yes?
Yes, no, it works. It works. Good. Thank you. Well, it actually wasn't the question because I heard what you said. You answered already my colleagues at length. And my question is, if I reformulate it, because I think it was not correctly understood, if Mr. Borrell reminded Russia about its obligation in the Council of Europe, because Russia also signed for European Convention of Human Rights, and that there is an obligation to respect Article 2, namely right to life of Mr. Navalny. So that is the aspect I wanted to find out.
Anna, I think I will get back to you on this question. At this point in time, I cannot go further than what I said. I will get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nabila. I will now invite colleagues to ask additional questions to Nabila if you have any. So please raise your hand if that is the case. I do not see any hands raised. So thank you very much, Nabila. And now we open the floor to other questions. But before, I need to invite Vivian on stage to provide an answer to the question that was asked by Athanasios regarding Cyprus.
Hi, Athanasios, and thank you for your question. The Commission is aware of these announcements about the plans to reopen the fenced-off area in Varosha, in Famagusta. On the status of Famagusta and Varosha, the European Union will continue to be guided by the United Nations Security Council Resolution 550 from 1984, the one you referred to yourself, as well as other relevant Security Council resolutions. We have repeatedly emphasized that it remains crucial that Turkey commits and contributes to the settlement of the situation in Cyprus, including its external aspects, within the United Nations framework, in accordance with the relevant Security Council resolutions, as well as the principles on which the European Union is founded. And on the European side, we will continue to convey clear messages to Turkey regarding that. It still remains urgent for the parties to seek, with the support of the United Nations, a path back to the resumption of settlement talks, aimed at the reunification of the island in the EU, inside the EU, based on a bi-communal and bi-zonal federation with political equality as set out in the United Nations Security Council resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivian. I will now invite you to ask additional questions to Vivian, if you have any, on this subject, on Cyprus or another subject that she covers, since she's on stage. I do not see any questions for you, Vivian, so thank you very much. We now open the floor to other questions, and I see Lily's hand is raised. Lily. I hope that Lily can connect. Yes, she's there.
Hi. I have a question regarding Commissioner Hogan. So Ireland's agriculture minister has resigned after attending a golf event with 80 people, and Commissioner Hogan was also in attendance. So my question for you is, does Commission President von der Leyen believe that Commissioner Hogan should remain in office after attending this event? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Lily. This enables me indeed to clarify that, as you said, Commissioner Hogan attended on Tuesday an event organised by the Irish Parliamentary Golf Society. He attended so in good faith. He attended this event on the clear understanding that the organisers and the hotel concerned had been assured by the Irish Hotels Federation that the arrangements proposed to be put in place for the event were or would be in compliance with the government's guidelines. So this is the situation regarding Commissioner Hogan's participation to that event. Allow me also to say that Commissioner Hogan, on a broader note, takes very seriously the COVID-19 rules and regulations. And as an illustration of this, upon his return from Brussels to Ireland for the summer holiday, he had self-isolated himself for 14 days in accordance with the local regulations in Ireland. And this is an example of how seriously he takes rules and regulations on COVID-19. Lily, I think you have a follow-up question.
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, please.
Before the event, that in good faith he did not realize what the circumstances would be, but once he was at the event, did he leave early? Did he raise concerns about the circumstances? And more broadly, I think many of us are quite curious whether you are creating any concrete guidelines, because I think the last time we raised this question, there were no concrete guidelines for commissioners themselves, but this summer commissioners are traveling very widely, some of them to countries and regions which have quite high COVID rates. So I was wondering if any new policies and sanctioning mechanisms are being put in place for the future. Thank you.
Lily, I missed the beginning of your question. The sound was not good, but if I understand you correctly, you asked whether once on the premise Commissioner Hogan did anything, if he left early or anything like that. Well, I don't have any specific information about how long he stayed there. What I can clearly say is that the Commissioner attended this event only because he was assured, after asking about that the event would be in compliance with the rules established by the Irish authorities. and therefore he attended it completely in good faith. I do not have information about how long he stayed there, and obviously with hindsight, had he known that the event would not be in compliance with the rules and guidelines established by the Irish authorities, he would not have attended it, because it's important for him to act responsibly in matters regarding COVID-19. Regarding the commissioners, I think we had the opportunity to say here that commissioners are citizens, and for the President it is important that all the members of the College act responsibly in matters regarding the COVID-19 rules and regulations. These are important matters pertaining to not just to the individual health of the commissioners, but pertaining to public health. And this is why we believe it's necessary and important that commissioners take all the precautions that are necessary depending on their travel arrangements for the summer, so as to comply with the rules and regulations that are in place around the EU. Thank you very much. I see that Shona now has a question. Shona? I hope that Shona is connected. She is trying to connect. While waiting for her to be connected, I will open the floor to other questions. So anyone else, any other questions for us today on this or other matters? I do not see any other questions, so I do wait for Shona in this case.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's fine, you are there.
In relation to what happened at the golfing event on Wednesday, given that we know that a minister has resigned already, a senator has resigned, and there were over 80 people at the event, which I suppose is kind of a clear breach of the guidelines. Do we know, is this the end of the matter now, and has Commissioner Hogan spoken with President von der Leyen? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, Shona. I missed the beginning of your question, as was the case for Lily earlier, but I imagine the question is what happens now. So I can, and about the developments in Ireland, we take note and we are aware about the developments in Ireland and about the resignations that you mentioned. As regards Commissioner Hogan, I can only repeat that he attended this event in good faith and following assurances that he received that the event would be organised in conditions which are fully compliant with the regulations introduced by the Irish authorities. And of course, with hindsight, he regrets the fact that this seems not to have been the case. And with hindsight, he would not attend an event which is not in line with the obligations introduced at local level. But it's not for us here, for the Commission, to comment further on the number of people that attended this event and on whether the event, on what respects was or wasn't compliant with the guidelines and regulations introduced by the Irish government. I think that Shona has a follow-up question.
Yes, sorry. Do you know, has Commissioner Hogan spoken to President von der Leyen about the issue?
President von der Leyen is in very frequent contact with a member of the College about all relevant matters, and such contacts are not interrupted by the summer holiday, and of course the President is informed about the matter. Thank you very much. I wonder if there are any other questions for today. I do not see any additional hands raised, so this leads me to concluding that there are no additional questions for us today. Indeed, no other hand raised, so I thank you very much. I wish you a very good afternoon and weekend, and we see each other on Monday. Bye-bye.